Hello, this is Patrick Stillman and Redden Winter, and we welcome you to Beyond Gallery Walls. This is a monthly podcast for artists and patrons of the arts, and we're going to just have a general conversation between the two of us on a variety of topics, and we hope you'll join us each month. Welcome, Redden.
Hi, thank you for inviting me here. My name is Redden Winter, and I am a studio artist here at the Studio Door. I have a background in performance art, actually, arts history, PhD, and I have been a artist since about 2018 was when I decided to really call myself an artist and think of my practice in a professional manner.
Nice.
Patrick?
I am the artist and gallery owner of the Studio Door Art Gallery, and we're located in San Diego with 17 studio artists, a 3,000 foot gallery, and we show a variety of programming to fit the spectrum of needs for local artists who are interested in creative commerce.
So today, what are we going to be talking about, Patrick?
I think that we should delve into patron collecting, authentic patron collecting.
I think that sounds great. So today is going to be all about if you are maybe a new person who is looking to start a new collection, but also maybe you've already started your collection and some ideas and thoughts about how to build that art collection. And for artists joining, this is a great conversation to sort of think about while you're making your art and reaching out and trying to connect to collectors.
Great. So why don't we start off with taking a look at maybe how to read a painting. What do you think about that?
So I think that for some, not everyone, but for some, people can become quite intimidated, especially when they walk into an art gallery space or when they're walking into an artist studio. They can sometimes get a little sort of intimidated. They don't know what they're supposed to say, what they're supposed to do. And so I think that when we're talking about reading a painting, my suggestion, and you can decide to agree with me or not, is to take a little bit more time than you normally would with something that you're visually looking at. And in that, not only are you maybe looking at the colors, the lines, but you're also paying attention to how it is hitting you physically, in your mind, emotionally. And I have a little tactic that I like to do whenever I look at a piece of art is I like to look at it far away, and then I like to walk up and look at it close, and then walk back again and look at it far away and spend a little bit more time with it.
So that's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
I have a little more of a formal sort of process that I go through.
Yeah.
But I wanted to re-echo what you said. I hear a lot from patrons that come into the gallery how intimidated they are by art. So maybe they're not patrons, maybe they're first time, they're coming into a gallery for the first time, and they are honest enough to reveal that they're a little uncomfortable with art. And so what I've discovered is that if I give them a few techniques, maybe it can break down some of the barriers. Because art is not all that complicated. Contemporary art versus historical art. I think there's a different set of kind of rules for historical art. But when I'm looking at contemporary art, the first thing I do is I just accept the piece as I see it, just initially, and just sort of soak it in. And then once I've sort of done that, just taking a casual look at it, then I look at it from a more strategic point of view. And I'll start off with taking a look at what I actually see in the painting. What is it that you visually see when you're looking at the piece? And from there, you can break it down into looking at composition, how things are laid out on the canvas, And then certainly color and light. How is that playing throughout the image? And then taking a look at the artist's technique. How are they working? Are they using a brush? Are they using their fingers? Are they using palette knives? What's the techniques they're using to create that image? And then sort of an overall perspective of, do I feel like that is telling a complete story, that the artist completed the canvas? And then, after being so intellectual, I sort of like stop and then just ask myself, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
I think through all of that, the real key is how you feel about the piece. How does it move you?
Yeah, I think that we've all seen television shows or movies or something like that, where there's that moment in the gallery where the person walks in and they look at the painting and they go, oh, I think that this is a dissection of the, whatever it is. It's very over the top sort of conversation, which that's great. That's perfect. But I just want to reiterate, like, I don't think that anyone has to have some big arts history knowledge or a knowledge of art in general to truly like get into an artwork, to get into a painting or to get into a sculpture. I think that, again, what you're saying, where the noticing of what's happening in the painting before you're trying to name it, right? Just noticing it, just taking it in as it is, and then sort of going through the process that you're mentioning. And at the end, which I think is the most important as well, is saying, do I like this piece? How does it make me feel? Where do I feel it in my body? Is there tension in certain areas? Is there calmness in other areas? Am I having a nostalgic moment where I'm thinking about a time in my, whatever it is? Every single person can connect to art without needing some sort of background. And so I think that, like, again, that's why I love for me, that sort of moving closer and then moving back again and it's what I actually do when I make my art. And I do that with people's work as well when I'm looking at them. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I think it really comes down to buying what you love. I use some similar techniques when I'm curating a show or inviting artists into the gallery, or even when I'm jurying an exhibition. It's slightly different, and I slightly tweak that. If that's something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments, and maybe that's a different podcast, and we can go into what a gallerist looks at to find art for the gallery and what he's looking at when he looks at that work.
Yeah, maybe that will be a subject for another one. So if you'd like that as a subject, let us know.
Absolutely. But I think that when you buy art, it should definitely be about how you feel moved by it.
Yes.
I know some people want to collect for creating a body of work in their home. But I think if you don't have an emotional connection to it, you're not going to love it over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I think that no matter what type of art collector you are, and maybe we'll start sort of breaking that down, there's a lot of art out there that you can find an art piece or many art pieces, if we're talking about a collection, that does speak to you within whatever that type of art collection you want it to be, that truly sort of moves you, versus I'm just going to grab this, because somebody thinks that would be good to have on my walls. So yeah, do you want to maybe start breaking down the different types of art collectors out there and why?
Sure.
The whys behind different art collections?
Yeah, so I think a lot of different art patrons who are serious collectors will approach it very differently. Mm-hmm. So you might be passionate about abstract art and want to create a body of abstract art. You might want to simply fill your home with pieces that resonate with you and your personality. Or maybe you're buying artwork with the idea of investing and hoping that that artwork will regain more value over time, so that maybe in your retirement or whatever, that you'll have some sort of artwork that can be a nest egg. So I think that there's different reasons why people are purchasing art, and that's going to inform how they act and engage with the art in the gallery.
Absolutely. I think that it's it's important to sort of, if you're really saying, I want to start an art collection, not I'd like to get a piece and hang it somewhere or put it in my office, but really sort of thinking about it as a collection, and why you as a patron collect art. I think it's really nice to sort of do a little sort of, I don't know the word, prepping of yourself, of like, really, what is it that you want to do? You mentioned, movements, right? I want to have a collection of abstract expressionism, or I want to have a collection of animals. But it can also be maybe a collection that is more tied to that emotional idea that you stated. Like, maybe it's just, I want to collect art that reminds me of this moment in time, right? Or I want to collect art that creates a very specific tone or mood to my space, especially, that could be the tie-in to everything, right? So there's a lot of different things and ways to look at collecting art that sort of will allow each art collector to find like their sort of voice in the collection, whether or not they're using an interior designer or an art curator to sort of help them along the way, or doing it on their own. That sort of helps to envision sort of the whole collection in a holistic manner, without it being, it has to be all these types of paintings, right? It can be
Sure.
like a tone or a mood, or it can just be like, I am going to collect things that make me go, oh, I need to sit with this. Like, I need to sit with this work. That's
Well,
all.
I know that we're both collectors.
Yes.
So how does it that you approach it?
I am a sentimental, emotional collector.
Me too.
So, because here's the thing, for me, the idea of investment, and I think that I have tips for people who want to use it as an investment, but it's the luck of the draw. Unless you're already buying somebody who is extremely established,
A blue chip gallery.
a blue chip
artist.
gallery art, and even then, you don't know if that investment is going to lead to financial gain. You don't know if this is going to increase. You never know that. And most of the people out there who have created these absolute amazing collections that are now worth billions of dollars, they didn't start off going, okay, I need to make money off my art collection, right? So for me, the way that I collect art, it's truly about how I feel with it. One of the things I always think about is, if I leave a gallery space, or I leave a museum, or I leave an artist studio, and I'm still thinking about that work, and I didn't leave with it, right? And I'm still, and now it's been a day or two, and I'm still thinking about it. That's how I know.
Mm-hmm.
Generally
Great
speaking,
instinct.
yeah. Generally speaking, I know in the moment, like, it just hits me in the gut, or it makes my breath go away a bit. And it's not about a pretty piece. It's hitting me in a visceral way. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I collect and find my pieces. And I also want to support artists that I have connections to as well. So if I have even like a personal connection to an artist, that drives it, right? Because I want to help to support their practice, even in a small way.
That's so interesting, because I find that I'm a sentimental collector as well. So I tend to buy pieces that connect me to artists. that connect me to a space and time. Like when I'm traveling, I like to pick up something and then that becomes a part of that memory of that space. Um, and when I look at the works in my own home, I am not only resonating with the art, but also it's evoking lots of memory for me, connecting me to people and places.
Hmm. Yeah. I just love the way that art can take you to a moment uh, in space, in time, in a relationship. Um, and then it can also sort of change and alter as time goes on, and it's like the painting itself can move with you. It's like you're growing as a person with the art at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if, speaking to those people who aren't sentimental,
Mm-hmm.
emotional
Yeah.
collectors, what advice, Patrick, do you have, let's say, for somebody who's looking for investment?
Okay, so let me just start with you made a decision to collect art.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a reasonable way to approach that is to just sit down with yourself and sort of lay out a game plan. You know, what is it that you're moved by? What is it? What is the type of collector you want to be? And then create a plan to sort of theoretically how you're going to approach that. So, for example, um, I suggest that you sit down and figure out, okay, I'm in my life, I need to budget things or plan for that. So maybe I'm going to set a certain dollar amount per quarter, per year, whatever period of time we're thinking about, and decide, you know, some sort of goal. You don't have to necessarily spend that money within that time period, but it just gives you a goal so that you know that you are sort of on track with what you want to do without being distracted by the art. So maybe like sit down once a year, plan out, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars over the year, and I'll probably do that on a quarterly basis. And then as I go out in the world, I know that when I'm looking at some works, I can spend so much and be within that range. Or, yeah, to limit myself from getting overly excited and buying too much, spending too much too quickly. Because if you want to buy a collection, build a collection, you really want to be thoughtful about that. You might decide, hey, this is a piece that I'm not going to see again, and I need to spend that money now. Or you might decide that, oh, maybe I need to slow my roll and figure it out. And so the first thing I think is you need to figure out where you are financially with that goal, and then determine, exactly which type of collection you want to create. So if you're thinking about, um, for example, I have a patron who loves California art. And so they're buying contemporary and historic art that is all about California. And early California painters, early San Diego painters were very much landscape painters or even photographers of landscape. And so this collection then is making sure that, I'm touching upon some of the key artists. I'm touching upon the different mediums, photography and plein air or regular paintings, and even maybe certain time periods. And I'm enhancing that by not just looking backwards, but working with contemporary artists who are also working in that same vein. So I think that's one way to approach collecting. For investment, it is speculative. So unless you're dealing with blue chip artists, which means like, you're going to a gallery in a big city that's carrying Matisse's, Picasso's, all these names that you automatically recognize, those are typically blue chip. And that means that they're expensive. And the prices on those vary with the market. And so you'll hear about auctions or even things like at Art Basel, where people are spending their money on these high-end artists. Um, so that's I guess, safer market to be in if you can afford it. But when it comes to contemporary artists, it's even more speculative. You don't know how long that artist is going to be around, how long they're going to be seriously painting any sort of series, or what is the time frame of their work. So that's where I think you start switching to what really is your passion, and that you collect from there, and then you hope that the work will increase. I often will monitor the artists that I purchase from and see what's happening with their work over time. Is their prices going up slowly every year? Are they discounting their prices? What's happening with the work? And that's giving me an idea then of what is happening with my collection.
Yeah, that is interesting that you said that, because that was what was sort of going through my head, is that, and again, with investment, saying I'm going to invest in art because I'm looking for hopefully a financial reward at some point. Again, as you said, we don't know. But there are some things that you can do to see, not necessarily if this particular artist is going to become one of the huge auctions, artist later on, but you can check in on them, as you said, and see, like, are they working? Do you see them doing the work? Are they still working? Um, and again, we're talking about artists that are still alive. There are plenty of art that you could buy from people who are no longer with us. But a lot artists that are alive, are they working? Are they having a lot of sales and things like that? Because for me as an artist, I look at that. If I see that, okay, I bought a piece from somebody in December, and in February now it's 50% off everything. I'm now looking at that artist through sort of a business mindset, right? That they may be looking at their art in a way that's may not sustain them for a long period of time. And as an artist, this is a journey, this is a long life. And so I want to make sure that the collections and the pieces that find their way into my collection are from artists that are doing the work. There's a little bit of that too in what I sort of want to bring into my collection, because I know that there may be a slightly better chance that they might take off, and they might be just put in sort of a higher level. The other thing I might recommend, and again, this is really just for someone who's really about investment, and that's like their thing that they want to do for a collection, is take some time to really do your research on the artist. Then see what they've done, what shows have they done, what you can ask for their CVs, or look at their websites, or just have conversations with them of sort of where they've been and where they're going. It might help you sort of see if they align with your values a little bit in terms of what you think that sort of investment art opportunity might lead to. Again, at the end of the day, I'm saying make sure you connect to the art. Make sure that is something that you, for whatever reason, have just had an intimate moment with this painting, or this sculpture, or this photo, so that you always have an art collection that you love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think investment is always going to be speculative. We said that already. But I think that if you have work that truly resonates with you, with your goals and your ideals, your personality, then you're going to have a collection that's going to give you great satisfaction over time.
Right.
I just wanted to give one pro tip, and that is when you are planning to collect and you're making a financial plan, that you don't forget about sales tax, commissions, or shipping costs,
Yes.
because those things often add up and people often forget about those things. And um, yeah, you need to be aware of that, which maybe leads us into a little bit about some etiquette about buying art when you're working with a gallery or when you're working directly with an artist.
Yes.
Yeah, so why don't we expand upon the idea of connecting with the artist like you were just talking about?
Yeah, so I think, again, it sort of leads back to a little bit of sometimes people feel intimidated talking with artists about their work. They don't know what's the right questions to ask, or they feel like, oh, if I ask them this thing, they're gonna, look at me strange and walk away. What does this mean? Questions like that. So when it comes to actually collecting the art, reaching out to the artist, I think that it's important to have an open dialogue with them. So I have no issues with a collector who's interested in purchasing one of my works asking me, what are the options that I have for payment, let's say. So payment plans, I'm open to payment plans. A lot of artists are open to payment plans without having, trying to discount the work. Asking specifics about shipping and sales tax. Is this all included or is it a separate charge? These are things that I think are important to ask. But also I want to say that there's a time where you can ask questions. You can ask if there's a way to move around the price a bit. But at a certain point, we want to make sure as a collector that you're not coming across as belittling the work of the artist. Pricing is probably the biggest question that I get from artists all the time. How do I price this? What price should I put on this? Should I go by size? Should I go by square inch? Should I go by linear? Should I go by time? Should I go by materials? So generally, the price that's chosen for the paintings are very thought out. And the artist has spent hours trying to decide on this pricing structure. And so, again, I think that it's perfectly acceptable for a possible collector of my work to say, is there any chance of getting this down slightly? Is there a way that I could pay for it over time? Or even coming and going, wow, I really love this, all of your work. I have $3,000 that I can spend. Maybe they're staring at a piece that's $3,500. I have $3,000 that I can spend. And as an artist, we can also sort of lean into whether we're going to go down a negotiating path. But I would say to artists, make sure that you're not negotiating your soul away, because artists have to make money. And for art
The
collectors,
sirens are going off.
Yeah.
This is important. Listen to us.
Right. We're going to wait for that to pass. And for art collectors to say it's okay to negotiate a little bit, but there's a pause. When you start to badger, if you've asked more than once or twice, it's time to stop. That's like in my opinion.
Yeah, I have very strong feelings about this. And I think it's okay to ask if there's wiggle room and find out if there is that opportunity to make a deal. But I feel that if you're walking into a gallery and you want to make that deal, or you're walking into an artist studio and you're like, I want 25% off, something like this, then you're really starting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had an artist who was being featured in the gallery, and he had brand new work that hadn't been seen. And I had some people come in, and I hadn't even hung the pieces yet. They were still on the floor as I was preparing to hang them. And they immediately wanted to um, get a better deal, and um, and came across very aggressive in um, what they wanted. And I just took great offense to that. And I explained to them that, you know, uh, I already work with the artist to make sure that the pricing is reasonable and acceptable for where the art is selling when it's in my gallery. And that oftentimes I've already pre-made a deal with the artist to get a better price for my patrons. And so somebody who's coming in and just automatically disregarding the price and wanting to um, just barter, um, it always makes me pause and step back. Um, you know, when you go out to dinner, you don't negotiate on the price of the steak. When you go to the doctor's office, you don't negotiate how much it's going to cost to have an operation. You, even when you go to the mall and you're buying, you know, back to school clothes or whatever, the price is right there and it's set. And you don't spend the time haggling. But for some reason, a lot of people think, oh, art, ha ha ha. The artist does it because they love it, and they're not really seriously considering that the artist has already thought about pricing and building a career. Just because we want to see an artist's prices go up when we collect, and we want to know when we buy something that the next person coming in isn't going to, you know, get a better deal because, you know, they're aggressively trying to negotiate something. That's really unacceptable. But then again, I say it's all right to ask, you know, if there's wiggle room. Are you buying more than one piece? Are you having the work shipped? You know, will there be sales tax, or is it out of state? There's typically not sales tax here in California. And so, you know, all of these other factors may play into it and be a part of the overall negotiation. But, you know, I just think that patrons need to be especially respectful with an artist, even more so than a gallery owner, about making those negotiations, and what are they actually saying to that artist about how they value the art. And
Well, and I would even say that for an art collector, right? Not as an artist, but as an art collector. If I can really negotiate with an artist down a lot on a piece, then I'm wondering what others have been able to negotiate. And then I now don't trust the pricing structure. And now I don't trust really what's happening with the artist's career. And so now I'm thinking, did I actually overpay for this even though I got a discount? Because I don't know what other people have been able to get and do. And so for me as an art collector, you know, I do think about that. And as an artist, I most definitely think about that. And something that you brought up, and I just want to say, you know, throw out to the artists who are listening, is Patrick you mentioned that you have good, deep conversations with the artists that are coming in and showing in your gallery. And I think artists need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and having those conversations with people that we work with in the gallery system. You know, asking them, you know, do you ever give a discount? What might that look like? Does it come out of my part of the commission? Does it come out of a joint, or do you just take it out of your commission? You know what I mean? And I think that those conversations are very important to have if you're showing in a gallery. Oftentimes artists that are, you know, established artists are a little bit more confident and able to have those conversations. For people starting off, or maybe they just get so excited to show in the gallery, and then they really haven't asked those hard questions. And I think that's really important to understand and ask. I've had a situation happen where I was working with a particular group, and all of a sudden they were going to give a 30% discount off of my work, and they did not let me know this.
Wow.
And so I think and I pulled it and said no, because you had the option to not have the discount, but they sort of didn't tell me, and I just sort of saw the post. So I think it's really important when you get into any sort of relationship with a gallery as an artist that you ask those questions so that you're very
Definitely.
aware of what the possibilities could be.
Yeah,
And I just wanted to throw that out there.
yeah, I think that's great because, you know, every gallery is run as differently as every artist paints. There is no standard about how galleries are run, how things are priced, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Galleries can be very different. They can be in like studio workspaces, but they happen to be selling something. They can be a neighborhood art gallery that's supporting local artists. They might be more like a blue chip gallery where they're dealing with estates and foundations. So that structure is always going to be different.
Yeah.
I find that most artists who are established have a set price for their work. And it doesn't matter if they're selling it directly or if they're selling through a studio, that price is set. And so even going in and thinking, oh, well, the gallery's getting a commission, so maybe I can take some of the money down there and still work out a deal. Oftentimes, the person who's losing out is the artist if their prices are just stable and a discount is taking place. So I think it's important that the artists do have those conversations, that artists make those decisions on pricing before they get involved in selling at art fairs, through galleries, or even directly.
It's a small world. We need to make sure that the pricing is across the board standardized for the work. So when I'm selling a piece out of my studio, that is the same price on my website, in my studio, as well as in a gallery setting. And because again, it goes back to, this is the art and patron and artist connection it's such an intimate act, right? It's a collector is coming to you and trusting you to say, I really believe in whatever it is that you have made. It's touching me in some sort of way. Maybe I don't even know how, but it's touching me in some way, so much so that I want to take this thing and I want to hang it in a space that I spend time in. Whether it's your business, whether it's a hospital, whether it's your home, whether it's, right? That's very intimate. To be like, this thing that you made, and I'm going to stick it on my wall. And you're never probably going to see it again now. Now
Right.
It lives with me. Or I'm going to put it on a pedestal if it's a sculpture, whatever you make. So that's a very intimate act. So the minute that I see artists, and again, I don't think a lot of it's intentional. I think it's just misunderstood. Where I see artists, well, oh, come to my studio and you can get it for $200, but through the gallery it's that couple $1,000. Now the trust isn't there, and I want to I'm bringing these things into my space. This is the symbol of the intimacy between. There's something that we connect with, and so I think it's very important that across the board, your price is your price, and whether you're selling it from your studio or whether you're selling it through a gallery, that needs to be there, because again, as a collector, I'm looking for that honesty and that truth. Because I want the art to be honest and truthful. Right. And if I'm seeing that the artist is doing a lot of wiggling and then I'm not necessarily trusting what they've made either.
Well, I think for a lot of artists, this is the business area that they're the least comfortable with.
Yes.
But beyond pricing, I think it's absolutely important that you, as a collector, establish a bond with that gallerist or directly with that artist. Because I think that there's great enjoyment to be had when you build those connections and you discover, why is an artist creating things? Why is the artist saying certain messages throughout their work, are utilizing certain techniques or colors? there's usually a process behind the art that you might not see right away.
Mm.
And to learn that directly from the artist can give a collection so much more resonance.
Yeah, and I would say, as going back to sort of both gallery and artists in terms of, our etiquette of a collector, it's okay to take time. It's okay to not buy it right in the moment. Hey, if it's hitting you right in the moment and you can say it, we all love that. And I even especially love, like, if something just hits me so much in the moment, it's like, I got to have that now because I don't want anyone else to get it, right? But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's very slow. Sometimes it's just, in the back of your head for a couple of days. You're like, why am I still thinking about this piece? As an artist myself, and I'm assuming as a gallerist, the last thing we would want is someone to take a piece immediately, quickly home and not actually like it when they get it up on that wall and go, oh, and then ask for, some artists do refunds. I don't ever want to get a painting back.
Nobody does.
I don't ever want to. Once it is sold, I do not want in a week to be getting an email from someone. This doesn't work. It's not the right size. The lighting it looks differently in my home, and so I think it's very important that in that building of the relationship with the gallerist or with the artist, if you're going to buy directly from the artist, it's okay to take time, and it's okay to even request, like, can you send me, if it's a local person, is there any way, I really like a couple of these pieces, is there any way we can maybe more so for the artist than the gallerist, but do an in-home consultation where we're going to put a couple pieces up on the wall so that I can see how it really affects me in my space? That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, that's building the relationship and building the connection. If you're looking for a specific sized piece, tape it out on the wall so you know, like, how big you really want this piece to be if it's for a really specific space. So that, again, we're not getting those paintings back. And the other thing is if you are not local, do not be intimidated for asking the artist or even the gallerist for some extra photos, maybe a video. Can you get a little closer on this? I'm looking at it on the website. All computers have different colors. So I've had plenty of people reach out to me, and I've, as a collector, reached out to others and said, I really love this. Can I see it from this angle, though? Because there's a weird glare or something in the photo, because we're not all great photographers. And so don't be intimidated by those questions. Don't be intimidated by getting the nitty gritty, because at the end of the day, when that piece, that artwork, leaves this artist studio, leaves the gallery, we don't want the person to go, oh, I really regret buying that.
I definitely think that impulse buying is not the way to go if you want to create a collection. You really should sleep on it. At the studio door, we not only have the main gallery, but we have artists working studios. And so this gives patrons an opportunity to come in. And even though the artist may not be here, in our space, you can see into the studios and you can actually see their work developing, changing. Perhaps they're showing different series of works over time. And it really helps to, inform, the patron about what's going on with that artist and their work. And I think that when the right piece pops up, it'll speak to them and then they'll know. So really, I think taking your time is a good thing.
Yeah.
And being thoughtful in your collecting.
Yes, I agree.
One thing that I do feel passionate about is the joys of collecting art. And, when you have a piece of art, it'll resonate with you in ways that you don't even expect when you buy it. When I hang a work in my home or my office, I find that it changes in the light of day. It changes depending upon my mood, upon the events taking place around me, and can often catch my eye and surprise me or engage me and pull me out of the moment and back into the painting. And I mean, I find that really rewarding.
I have a couple of pieces in my living room space where I get excited by the transitions that occur throughout the day and how it alters how I feel. I have works where if I get very revved up, a little stressed out, a little a little just uppity, if you might say, that if I go and sort of look at it, it will literally help me to calm down. I have works that I look at where it just takes me back to the moment I was when I bought it. Maybe not even just like local, like a locale, but just sort of where my head was at. The benefit of collecting outside of like I must build an art collection in a very specific way that we think about that in terms of an art collection that'll eventually be out, some museum will buy my art collection. That it truly helps to create. It helps to take your space and make it more of you and yourself, your values, like your identity. So that when you walk into your space, you feel like you're seen and represented in it. Does that ever happen to you?
I definitely have had that experience. With the art that I live with, I often am taking a look at it and I see things I haven't seen before, or something resonates with me, a little element of that painting pops out, and it changes how I perceive the work. So, especially with the abstract works that I have, um, it's like there's movement and color and composition that shifts throughout my experience with it, and it brings up new emotions and feelings, and I love that.
Yeah, that makes me think about how paintings, which is probably why we keep saying make sure it's something that you connect with, that paintings grow with you. And I have works that when I bought them, I was in a very specific headspace or a very specific moment in time. And my connection to them hasn't gotten less because I've sort of moved away from that headspace or that time. It like moves with you. And so the same piece, and this has happened to me even with very photorealistic works as well as abstracts and things like that. But even photorealistic works is that when I bought it, it made me feel a certain kind of way, or I was connected to it in a certain kind of way. And I'll relook at it a month later, a couple months later, a couple of years later, and it reads differently to me, not less powerful, just from a different mode. And it's like that's how you really know something's connected to you as a piece of art, because it's moving with you through your sort of your life.
Right.
And I have pieces that do that, and that's exciting because you buy a piece and it's hitting you in a certain kind of way, or you're emotionally attached to it a certain way, or maybe it's just an investment. But you, through time, really sort of, because it's you that's changing and you're coming at the piece in a different kind of way. And so then the work is now sort of speaking to you in a different kind of way. And I think that that's so beautiful.
I find that some of my patrons are taking the works and actually physically moving them from one location to another in their homes over time. Some people feel like, oh no, that's where it lives and it will never move. But I have others who like move the piece, and as they move the piece and live with it in a different place in their home, they experience it differently, or it resonates in a new way. I even have patrons who have a very large collection of art, and they take turns redecorating their walls on a quarterly basis.
Mm.
And because they have such a large collection, they can choose a theme or a time period or any other element of the art. Maybe it's just abstract versus figurative, and completely change their house. And on that quarterly basis, then they'll invite friends over for um, sort of a unveiling of their collection, and tell the stories about how they collected it or why they collected it, and um, then they get to live over 3 months with those pieces of artworks resonating with them in their lives in a very personal, deep way.
I love that idea, especially when we are thinking about sort of the quarters and the seasons. And, people do tend to sort of change up their decor, generally speaking, around that sort of time frame. And so I know some people go, ooh, when it comes to like a painting, and it's like, wow, there's this painting is not really now sort of, it's just vibing differently in the space, right? It's a different tone, it's a different mood. So I love that idea of, maybe you don't have enough of a collection yet to do quarterly, but even sort of thinking about being okay with moving the paintings around, or being okay with, this is going to go away, pack it up nicely. This is going to go away for a little bit and I'm going to bring it back out. Because I've heard people, or I've even sometimes myself said, ooh, do I have even room for this? But to think about, like, it doesn't always have to be out, right? It can take turns. And I love the idea of having like a little social gathering and sort of sharing it with others in your space. I mean, that's how uh, Gertrude Stein, actually, her art collection started, was she had salons and she'd invite people over to the salon and would have the work up on the walls of the Picassos. And when people were saying that's not good art, or what have you, it would have those salon experiences and sort of talk about art. I love that idea, Pat. I'm going to start doing that,
I love
Patrick.
that
Yeah.
idea too.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, for the people who are listening to us today, how precious is the art in your lives? Is that something that you move around your house? Is it something that you never move? Or is it something, yeah, how do you engage with your art? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even like think, if you're thinking about that sort of in the ways when we think about collecting art, we've talked about investment, we've talked about themes, we've talked about, the collections and stuff, but we haven't talked about that connection of like a community connection with bringing into your home or your business other art lovers to talk about the work that exists on your walls, and to sort of create smaller gatherings to foster engagement just with arts in general. I would love to know how many people out there actually are doing that or are excited by that idea, like Patrick and I are. And we'd love to hear about it. And put that in the comments as well if you are actually watching this on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that anybody who's collecting, anybody who has a love and a passion for something, whether it's cars, stamps, comic books, art, um, half the fun is being able to tell people about that passion that you have for those works and why you have what you have.
Yeah, share it with the world. Yeah, I love that.
I think we did a great job talking about some of the key points of authentically collecting for patrons. We hope that we've hit everything that you need to know. And if you have some ideas for future conversations around this theory or this concept, please let us know. And we hope to, bring you more content that you find resonates with you in your art collection.
Absolutely. And I will just say that I think that for Patrick and I both being sentimental, emotional collectors, I think that, the last touchstone would just be, when you go and see art, go to your local galleries, look online, go to your museums, just start to experience more and more art, because as you do that, you really will start to discover what speaks to you and be able to sort of walk into a space and really sort of be able to read the painting, um, because you've been doing it and you've been practicing. So that's what I will leave this with. And we are very excited that you have watched this and joined us. And we look forward to many more in this upcoming year. If this resonates with you, we invite you to like and subscribe to Beyond Gallery Walls.
Watch us on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts, and join us every month as we continue the conversation.
Whether you're an artist, gallerist, or art patron, we invite you to share your thoughts and experiences with us.
We'll see you beyond gallery walls.